Welcome, and thanks for joining us to another Land and Legacy Habitat podcast. This is your host, Adam Keith.
Matt Dye.
And Zach Shermer.
And we are very excited for this podcast because we first are going to cover the QDMA module. Go to qdma.com/land&legacy to sign up for the modules. We are on the 6th of 8 modules. Right. And this week is all devoted to the rut. After that, we're going to jump in and cover film number 4 that we released this past week. That we probably, overall, it's my favorite film that out of the 4 that we've done. This is my favorite. Just for a lot of reasons that we'll cover later. I know you guys probably feel about the same. And I
thought it was horrible. Yeah. Especially the videography.
Yeah, it was terrible.
The guest appearances.
Yeah.
The mustache appearances.
Yeah. And so we're excited to talk about it. They got a lot to cover in the film review, but first, QDMA module, the rut.
The rut. Is there a more debated topic across deer hunters than the rut?
Or an age of a deer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if there is, because everyone's that's when everyone's hunting the most, and so there's so many observations and stories, anecdotal stuff out there that's like, what do you even believe anymore? Like, can you believe it? Because there's some things, the wildest things happen during this time. Mm-hmm. Not to say that people are liars, but they really do see crazy stuff.
That's when we take our vacation time. That's when we're hunting
Everyone's
the first week of November. We're trying not to have babies the first week of November. If your buddy does, you say, "What were you thinking?"
Playing that better.
Yeah,
no
and
doubt.
So it's kind of like when you think of deer hunting, to me, when you think of bow hunting, it's always if you were just to close your eyes and you say, "Hey, I can't wait till next bow season, man, can you wait?" You close your eyes, you think of the rut. You think of leaves changing, bucks chasing does. And so it's definitely one of those things that we all just definitely think about and want to think about more and plan ahead for.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's so much anticipation built up throughout every single year. Everyone is out there at that time frame. Or it's funny because we're going to talk about it in a second, but the rut doesn't always occur in November during that time.
Yeah.
Zach, you kind of talked about it pre-show as the wide range of ruts that are experienced throughout the South, specifically from Texas to Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida. That map that was in there was wild.
It was really wild. And it's kind of funny because you were saying all the confusion. I'm a little low here. You were saying a little bit, there's so many things that you can debate about the rut. And the cool thing about these QDMA modules is that
we did that on purpose, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. They made me quiet, guys. Is that they put it to science. Like, you can see all these questions played out with the science they've done behind it.
You go to a website and, most frequently asked questions, that's always on a service website or whatever. They always have those, frequently asked questions about the ruts, and then they have research and science that just proves the facts behind them. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are, a myth this, a myth that, but really it's a law of averages over studies and years of studies that just say, okay, this is what's typically going to happen. And for instance, we're talking about the wide range of ruts that occur throughout the South, and there's so many different, I don't know, I feel like people try and blame it on, but what it comes down to is restocking efforts years and years prior and the lack of dispersion that the does have had, and they found out that because of that, or as a result of that, the genetic maternal instinct controls the timing of estrus in these does. They basically go back to the photo period of their mother, which determines when they become in estrus. So the restocking efforts, you can kind of see the distinct ranges of ruts throughout the South. It's like, why and how? But that's the reason.
Yeah, when everywhere else in the country, the Midwest and the North is just tiny little window where they all rut.
I love the difference between the northern states and the southern states, and how they said that the northern states, when you look at it, pretty much the rut happens in 3 weeks every single year, and it has from as far back as when they started studying. But in the South, it can go from August, or even I think it was Lindsey Thomas Jr.'s article where he said you could be in your flip-flops watching the fireworks.
Watching a buck scrape.
And there's a buck scraping in South Florida.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that so much when it's like, man, there's a lot of opportunity to go and hunt other states. And if I think of the poor souls, we'll call them, that are like, November's a terrible time for me due to work or whatever. You could still go to some other state down south and hunt the rut. It just may not be in November. You could hunt it in February. So what I found interesting,
you're still gonna have those flip flops on.
I said February, so you might have frostbite if you're in flip flops. But
no, I was talking about early.
Oh yeah, so you could go in August, or you could hunt the rut in August to February throughout the South, or go to Florida, and there's a spot everywhere in the state, in just the state of Florida, from August to February, where there's peak rut activity. So it's really interesting. Down south, it's just, there's a whole lot of piebald rut patterns, basically. I think what they called that graph was, it was very much a piebald pattern, where there was just splotches and colors everywhere for different peak ruts. So,
but it goes back to everyone's, it's the moon this, the moon that,
right? Yeah,
everything that plays into it. But it was the maternal inherited genetic, hey, this is when I become in estrus. And it blew my mind.
And in the South, they have the ability to lay fawns at different times of the year because there's longer growing seasons, right?
Exactly. The winter stress period, or there's a very, very small winter stress period. So they don't have to have fawns in this small window like states up north do, because fawns have to get to a certain weight or a certain health to be able to make it through that next winter. So those does that, in years past would have late bursts or come into estrus late up north, they just didn't have offspring. So that was weeded out throughout times and generation. But now it's a distinct 3-week period. You better get bred, or sorry, your fawns aren't going to make it, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And also, we have one part that I really enjoyed was the Hunting the Rut article that somebody wrote. And it's always nice to, you know how we base our management. We talk so much about doing certain things, and then what he's found in the research of where the bucks were moving and things like that was how to hunt the rut. And we always talk about bedding thickets and laying out strategic places to where we just go in and we do heavy TSI or full-on clear cut if there's no timber value, and we just make a nasty thicket that we know during a certain time of the year does are going to seek that. He called it escape cover, to where does are tired of getting pestered by bucks. And I don't know how many times we covered this on the podcast, but it's a lot.
Because it works.
Because it works, dang
There's
it.
science right here. It works.
And
Promise.
it's like, okay, and I think of this. I have this side slope, the line. I have this slope or the side of this hill that I can't. It's too flat, or it's too unlevel. It's too rocky for a food plot. What can I do? Well, I'll tell you what you can do that's better than a food plot.
Cut it down.
We can cut it down. We can do a heavy TSI. We can make it a bedding thicket. Let's line it out to where you can get in and hunt the downwind side of it, to where we know does are going to move in there during October, November, during the pesky time of the season where they're just tired of it. They go in there to hide. Bucks now start associating those areas with where the does are at.
Yep.
So they start seeking those spots out. And if you lay them out like a dot on, like, they just connect the dots.
They connect the dots, and you put them in the places that you can get to, like the saddles and the benches where you can hunt those places, because they're going to travel them.
For simplicity's sake, let's draw a circle and then put little dots all just inside the circle all the way around it. And that's all we're doing. And you can hunt it for each wind. If you have a west wind, you go on the east side and you hunt it to where they're going on the bucks are checking those on the downwind side, to where they're not wasting energy going in and going under logs and trying to hunt them out. They're just going to scent check them.
Yep.
And to me, that was just like, that's exactly, I mean, why is nobody else talking about this?
Yeah. I don't know, because I feel like everyone's looking for a more complicated answer. But the thing is, we know exactly what's going to happen during the rut. No matter what time the rut is, bucks will seek does, and does will seek thick escape cover. So let's just use that to our advantage, hunt those areas, create those areas, and done.
Let's just call it what it is. It's easier to sell a bag or something than it is a
escape cover.
3 hours of hard work.
Yeah, no doubt.
Of chainsaw backbreaking work.
Yeah.
Well, that was funny because I don't mean to cut you off, but
No, you're good.
that was one of the points that I had brought in that I guess I took away in the research from. His name was Andy, but he had collared bucks in Pennsylvania, and they took data points every 15 minutes throughout the rut, and even within the rut, he found that within the home ranges of these bucks, that they found specific areas that they traveled so intensely within a week's period of their home range or their core area. They just focused in on those areas. And my mind immediately, bedding area thickets.
Right.
Like,
because it was specific habitat areas too that he mentioned in the article.
Where else would they be? Why else would they be anywhere else? Because that's what they're doing at that time of the year. Create them and make them. The bucks will come.
Yeah, that kind of ties into what I was going to talk about with some of the interesting things I thought. Something I'm guilty of, and I'm sure a lot of hunters are, is, they're in lockdown right now.
Yeah.
The bucks are in lockdown. And you can use that article as a reference, but those bucks would, first off, a doe will go into estrus from 24 to 48 hours, and a lot of them will go around the same time.
Yeah.
So he's not going to have the ability to breed with all those does that go in the same time. And it's only a 24 to 48 hour window. As soon as he's done, he's going to go on to the next one. And within that time frame, he's going to be checking different spots of his home range, like that data that data they collected said. So that's not necessarily a lockdown. Like, they're not going to be with a doe for a week straight.
Yeah,
you know?
they're just chained up.
3 to 5 days is what I've heard my whole life probably has been. During that 3 to 5 day period, that's when they're locked down with that one specific doe. Yeah,
not quite like that.
And not one buck is going to dominate. He's not going to be the only one that's
dominating the breeding.
That's breeding those does.
If so, then the lockdown, like, that disproves the lockdown theory, right?
Exactly. They go together.
If they all breeding, coming in estrus at the same time, and he's locked down with one, that would mean only one got bred.
Right.
But that's not the case. As fawning season comes around, you have 10 fawns running.
And another thing about that, when going to that buck breeding all the does or whatever, the number of rubs they make, 1,000 to 1,200 rubs during that time frame.
Crazy.
But that equals about 10 to 15 rubs a day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's crazy. And you think about how as soon as I heard that 10 to 15 times a day, and I'm like, how many times have I seen a buck make a rub from a tree? Not a lot.
Yeah.
And then you're like, so they're doing it 10 to 15 times a day, and I'm not seeing a lot in years of hunting. So you go think about it like that, and you could say,
why do I hunt?
What else am I missing?
What am I doing? Yeah. Right.
Well, and that's the funny thing. How many times, I feel like this isn't a hunting strategy at this time because of research like this, but when I was growing up, like, Field and Stream, outdoor life was just littered with rub lines, hunting the rub lines. Like, that's what I grew up trying to learn.
Trying to find?
Or scrapes in November, early November.
Yeah. I was like, when I started to really get into research and stuff, it was like, man, all that happens at night. I wasted so many hunting seasons just spent, trying to find a rub line or a scrape line and hunt it when all that happened at night. And then it's like a rub line. You think it said 1,000 to 1,200 rubs a buck will make. And it's like, okay, let's see if you have 5 bucks. That's like 6,000 rubs, and I'm gonna try and find a transect. It's like, it's not gonna be a transect. It's gonna be like a circle, a maze, a matrix. And I think in my head, because I'm walking a straight line and finding them, that it's a rub line.
Well, what I was thinking too was, when you go to those rubs, how many times do you stumble into those real thick areas that you're like, man, there's rubs everywhere, and then you see the beds, and you're like, there's probably a correlation between more rubs happening in the bedding areas than they are out on next to your tree stand.
And then
food
you
plots.
quietly tiptoe out. You're like, I probably shouldn't be.
Yeah. I think what is the tree, the willow trees that you find in those kind of swampy, wet areas that are always just ripped?
Yeah.
And it's like 6 of them all together, and they're all torn up and broke and snapped. And
And you're like, that's probably buck beds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what was also like mind-boggling is, I think we talked about it too on the podcast, but it gets me every time, is that bucks will lose 20 to 25% of their body mass.
Oh, it's crazy.
During the rut.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's going into the worst time frame period that they can be, and they're losing that much of their body mass. So if it's a 200-pound deer, they're down to 150 pounds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's
and the pictures he had on that article were just
habitat
incredible.
management.
That's
right.
exactly
You got to
right.
give them the food that they can recover quickly.
Very quickly.
If you can get them to recover quickly, and you think about it, they're coming off the rut. So what is going to be really growing during the month of January and February? Not a lot.
Oh, I know.
And it's
Things
like
are going to be budding.
that's it. And you're like,
Timber
I need
management.
much more young
Browse.
forest
Right.
and browse than I do going and planting something that's like, oh, this is going to be prime time. There's even the stuff that grows great in the winter, like grows through the winter, isn't really going nuts during a cold December, January, February.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like, and then
Well,
you
and it's
look
not
at
like
March.
it's like super like nutritious. It fills the voids. Like
That's
it's not
it.
like it's sustainable for them, but it's not like a soybean. Like
No.
we know that, but it still has to be present.
We need browse.
We need browse.
That's it.
Deer need browse.
We need tons of browse.
Tons of it.
You look at it from the hunting aspect and going, okay, young forest, clear cuts, that's going to be pretty good bedding thickets, but it's also going to be great forage for them.
Yep.
What? No, what? Why haven't we heard the chainsaws fire up yet?
Yeah.
But you wrap this entire module up into one thing, and it really stressed the importance. It both said it, but also, if you were paying attention, it reminded us constantly the importance of understanding your deer herd and your habitat. To where
Totally.
I need better habitat, I need better forage for my deer, but I also need the adequate sex ratios, because it talked about the importance of having a balanced sex ratio to where we're not having does get bred later in the season because there's just not enough bucks to breed them on the first on that first cycle, to where they're breeding them in February.
Yeah, so they would cycle all the way into February if they didn't get bred.
They
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
And where I forget where he said he saw a fawn in Florida. I think fawn dropped in November.
Oh, that's crazy.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Kip used to work in Florida for a long
Yeah.
time. But yeah, I think he said it was a 9-month period. He saw one drop in April and then also drop in November.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
So the importance of understanding your sex ratio. And how often do we see this, Matt, with a consulting company go somewhere and it's just like the landowner tells us, I got too many does. I already know it. I got too many does. We hear that story almost
do.
everywhere we go.
Yep.
And you just like, when you look at it in areas where there's very little food because there's so many deer, and then they tell us there's so many does, it's like, oh, man.
Well,
it's
here's
way out
another
of whack.
connection. If there's so many deer, there's not much food and there's not much browse in the timber and thick areas, because seriously, we've gone to places, they have eaten it down. It will not regenerate. So you don't even have the thick areas, the bedding areas to hunt because there's so many deer. So it's like you have to start here, get the deer population under control before you can even begin to think about promoting the right habitat. That's
And
scary.
then you think about the poor buck who's out there running ragged trying
Yeah.
to breed all these does
does.
from November to February.
Yeah.
It's just, oh man, it's not good when nature gets out of whack.
Yep.
So I really enjoyed this one.
How
Yeah, it was
crazy
great.
was it
Really good.
that if a doe lays twins, those could be from different bucks?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I had no clue. And
Oh,
they
yeah.
did that study where they were captive deer, and they saw that, and then they were able to find that in the wild as well.
Yep.
Which I did not realize
think
that was a
it's
possibility.
25% of them, 25% of the fawns that are born as twins have different dads.
That's
I believe
crazy.
That's the figure. Yep.
That's
pretty cool stuff.
Film
Yeah.
4.
Film number 4.
buddy.
A lot more humor in this one.
Yeah. Lifestyles of the not so rich and famous.
Now we got to say why I think I don't know if we've shared, but why we've called episodes the reason we call them. So this one is called Lifestyles of the Not So Rich and Famous because we were singing the song Lifestyles of the Not So Rich and Famous.
Yep.
Because we were talking about how we'd never had a redneck fiberglass blind on any of our farms. We never really had a lot of fancy equipment. Like
we built blinds growing up.
I did too. Put them in forked trees. Find a triple forked tree and build a blind. And it lasts 2 seasons. You get a heck of a windstorm, and one tree got blown this way and the other one's the other way.
Spread a little bit.
They ripped it apart.
And then you have nails coming out of this 3-branch tree. And you're like, gosh, I wouldn't want to get up there anymore.
And that tree no longer has any timber value.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, the redneck blinds are definitely the primo of what we're looking for as far as something that's nice and going to last a long, long time.
Oh, for sure.
And so putting up the redneck reminded us of, boy, we kind of lived the lifestyles of the not so rich and famous. And so that's why the film was called Lifestyles of the Not So Rich and Famous. So
well, the other one was The Ghost of Mississippi.
yeah, that's another song
Yeah.
that we were listening to while we were in. It's a Steel Driver song.
Yep.
Why we were listening to it in Mississippi on the way down because we really liked that music. And then we started hunting
The
turkeys
Ghosts of Mississippi.
Mississippi. So that's why it was called that.
Should we bring Kyle Bennett's name up again
he's
in
gonna
this
get
podcast?
mad. He sent us a text.
Yeah.
He's upset.
we were down there in Mississippi with Kyle Bennett, and then the Ghost. Yeah.
Yeah.
They all know now, but we just had to bring it up.
Yeah.
Love you, Kyle.
So anyway, Lifestyles are Not So Rich and Famous. We kicked it off. We're setting up a redneck blind. Now, if they followed us on film number 3, I believe, we did the government program, the permanent forest opening, to where we basically had 400 acres of straight timber. So we did the government program, and we opened up 3 food plots just right at 2 acres. And this food plot, as most terrain here in the Ozarks, if you look at it on a topographical map, it's going to look like a lot of elevation changes. It's somewhat flat, but if we were to sit on the ground, I really am not looking forward to the day a turkey's gobbling in this food plot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's going to be
because
tough.
you sit on the ground, you can't see very far out there. I hate those setups. And you get those.
It's like you'd rather back up and kill in the timber.
Yeah, and what I hope we can do is set up on the north end of
Yes.
it and hopefully call them down that way.
A little bit longer with that ridge.
But down closer to this food plot, basically, just you head south down that ridge, you're going to run into a glady ridge. It's basically a glady elevator ridge. So that's kind of going to be a great bedding area during the winter.
Late season.
You got tons of native grasses, wildflowers, and woody species out there. It's going to be converted into pretty much the whole ridge is going to be converted into a glade. So it's going to be fantastic bedding during the late season. And so this is going to be the first, if they hit that ridge and come up, they're going to hit this food plot as they're working towards the big 7-acre food plot that we haven't opened up yet. And so kind of long term, it's going to be awesome. Right now it's going to be awesome because it's one of the only food plots in the area, and it hasn't had timbered around it yet. Now it probably will through this deer season, but it's the main food source in that area. And with the terrain, you sit on the ground, you can't see. So we elected to put the first redneck blind that we have on that food plot to where you can see most of the food plot. Now, there's still going to be parts of it on the far west side to where you may see a neck and antlers.
Hopefully big antlers.
Big antlers. But, yeah, it's definitely, that's why we put it there. Because we can see. Now, there's a lot of other reasons we can talk about now.
Which is basically, because of that glady ridge out there, we know that this is going to be a prime spot for deer to be bedding in late season. And then the blind also, because of its enclosure, offers a comfortable hunting during late season. So matching, we talked about this we had like a little QDMA branch, the local branch came out and did a tour. And we talked about this is matching your food resource to the area and your hunting setup. And so because of that glady ridge, we know, again, deer are going to be there bedding during late season. So in that food plot, we want a resource that they're going to hit during the late season to match that. So we know they're concentrated there, making that move up the elevator ridge, feeding in the plot during daylight hours. And we're in the blind, comfortable, out of the elements, and coming in from a whole different direction that they don't even know we're there. And that's what we got planned out, because there's soybeans now that we, fingers crossed, hopefully we'll make pods. The very, I guess it is the southwest portion, isn't browsed as much where they're first coming up out of that glady area. So hopefully we'll have some standing beans, but then we'll have the legacy blend broadcast and drilled throughout the rest of the portion of that food plot. So it's going to be a great location for late season standing grain and greens, great bedding close, and the hunting opportunity from that blind.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly, I've never hunted that farm, but I don't know the actual deer movements and the patterns, but the access on getting to that particular area of where you set it up is a great way to access it. It goes off a main road, which I'm sure probably deer aren't using a lot. You can sneak right up through the timber. There's a little bit of a knoll behind it. Just go right up the ladder, and you can probably get in that thing, and there could be deer out in the field, and they have no clue.
That's why we call it food plot or property architecture.
Yep.
Because it's never... It sounds easy to go, okay, I've got a piece of ground, I'm going to go put some food plots in, I'm going to put a road to those food plots. But that's not the best strategy to have. You really need to think about the layout. That's where our consulting company really comes in handy and really helps a lot of landowners, is finding the right place for a food plot. And just because you have a 5-acre flat doesn't mean to bulldoze everything down and make a huge food plot. Because just because you have that huge food plot doesn't mean it's going to be easy to hunt. And so I love that spot, because it is kind of just like you're driving along and it's just a little kick out,
ditch
basically.
off to the left and you're right there. You can get right up in the blind.
And
you're 30 yards off the main road, but it's a quick little walk, and from that food plot, they can't see the main road though. Like it's perfect. It's perfect.
So if deer are in the food plot, and that's the way this whole property is set up, to where minus one main destination big field in the very center, that's going to be the loading dock. That's why it's not a food plot yet. The loggers are going to be, that's where the logging truck's going in. So they're going to clear all that out, and it's going to end up being about 6 acres. And that's the only food plot that you will drive, the main road drives right to. But there's all kinds of roads going off to the side that will never go into it. So you could maneuver this whole property without ever driving through a food plot.
400 acres, right, and never touch one. If you want to go from top to bottom, east to west, doesn't matter. You can get somewhere without alerting deer feeding comfortably in food plots.
Yeah. So you think about that during turkey season too.
Oh yeah.
Turkey's out and you just walk, just keep on walking. Nah, he's got beard rot. Let's go to the next plot.
He's got a half-inch spur.
Yeah.
He's only 2.
Well, what? He's got a half-inch spur. Let's wait till Shermer's hunting with us.
Yeah.
No, and it also, you guys did a lot of edge feathering on that field too. That's just going to help even more.
I didn't think we showed. We didn't show that on this podcast or on this film.
No.
We did a lot of edge feathering, and we will
increase further the huntability of this.
Right.
Predicting where deer enter and exit that field.
We did our workshop last weekend. That was the QD branch, Ozark Highlands branch workshop, and the feedback we got was that most people were excited and interested in our edge feathering technique. So we'll probably devote an entire podcast specifically to edge feathering, because we didn't realize that, I guess there's not a lot of talk about this, and there's certainly not a lot of using it as a hunting strategy.
It's a habitat and hunting strategy, similar to a food plot, if you know, with that comparison, the benefits. But it is definitely an incredible hunting strategy, especially we could honestly do an aerial, take a drone shot, and then really map it out and do a good analysis of why we edge feathered here and this whole setup for a future podcast. But like I said, that was one of the most popular things at the field day. People were interested in edge feathering.
So all of our food plots will have it in the future, but that one specifically has the edge feathering phase 1. So we've cut a lot of trees. We're still got a lot more to cut, but it is going to be an awesome set. And as we say it all the time, introducing new hunters. What better way to introduce them to a person that's not yet developed the idea of sitting in the cold? You can first take them and set them in a blind with you, like a Redneck Blind, and even during the winter when it's really cold, but on a food source in the winter when it's really cold, you're going to see a lot of deer.
Yeah.
So you can introduce a lot of people to the outdoors during the late season just as much as I mean, early season's great, but it's hot. There's ticks. May not be the best experience, but
Hot
late
weather
season,
puts deer,
yeah.
in their
You said
bed.
in that redneck during December. Somebody else, I'll be in the hospital, but or at home in the nursery. But everybody else will enjoy it.
You think he's bitter about that?
Yeah, it sounds
I
like
really
it,
am
man.
not,
Maybe you should have
at
done
all.
better planning.
Not really.
Just kidding.
And so it's a great time. I have
It's a
several
perfect
people
time.
that want to. I didn't even think Matt's been on vacation. We haven't even talked about that, but my wife works with a lady who her and her husband have never hunted, and they're probably right around 30, and they're wanting to go.
That's
What better
awesome.
way
Perfect
to introduce
opportunity.
people
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you know if they like it, then if you get the husband and the wife to like it, you're going to get
That's
the
winning.
kids.
Right.
You're going to get a
Winning.
generation of hunters out of that. So
Yeah.
that's something I'm really excited to do too. And so what better way to take them to Redneck Blind? But that was just that was first part of it. That was just really, really awesome.
Real quick, Zach, you had never set one up and put it together. What are your thoughts on the assembly of it and then just getting it boom, flipped up and turned up?
I mean, us three put it together in 2 hours.
Probably
somewhere in
2
that
hours.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot
It-
as hate.
Yeah, it was very hot. Don't
hot.
get me wrong, but not that bad. And whenever we had it constructed, we constructed it with it laying down. Obviously, I was just assuming, okay, get the truck, pull it up. Nope, you guys were like, we're just gonna lift that thing up.
Yeah.
There's initial heavy lift to get it up, but once you got it up, you can just walk it up.
Walk it up, get it set.
Yeah, get it leveled out. Yeah, it's awesome. We just have at our farm, we just built like a big box blind, but it's always a fight to go there in the wintertime because it's the most comfortable. But I can imagine the redneck being the same thing with the fiberglass and
Well-
out of the shooting windows, the vertical side shooting windows
Oh,
with
yeah.
the bow. Everything about them is just really well done.
Yeah, and they improve it every single year.
Yeah.
So, like,
It
I
is kind of
think-
crazy. The first experience was like 8 years with them 8 years ago, but like every year it is something else is new kind of coming out, like new little feature this and that and bow hanger and
What are they-
eaves and tinting and all this stuff.
What do they think of next?
Yeah.
Like, to me, even the little drip trays and
Yeah.
Padded
Just-
floors, like all that stuff.
I've been in rednecks for a long time, and I've been in some that are over 10 years old, and I look at those, which I thought were like the Cadillac, and now I look at what they are now, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
That's the Aston Martin.
Yeah, so, anyway, yeah, I thought I enjoyed that section. Of course, I'm really excited to enjoy it this fall.
Yeah.
As we moved out of the redneck, we shifted to river fishing, and I think might have become a shocker to a lot of people that think of us as deer hunters. And as much as I hate that, I mean, I don't like being looked at as a deer hunter. I want to be
You
looked
mean
at
just as the deer
as
hunter?
just as a deer hunter. I want to
I
be
gotcha.
looked at as a land lover, if you will, and conservationist, where I enjoy deer hunting just as much as a serious guy, but I enjoy quail hunting and turkey hunting especially, and duck hunting. I just enjoy it all.
Well, you and your brother grew up on the river, didn't
That's
you? Fishing
it.
all as a kid?
That we
Yeah.
fished. What we showed in that film was how I grew up fishing. So a lot of guys would say, "Oh yeah, you fish," and then I'm like, "Yeah," and then they'll talk about, "Well, I'm headed to the lake." And I'm like, "I don't know how to fish the lake. I always fish the rivers because that's the kind of fishing I did. You float the rivers and you fish for smallies and goggle eye and whatever else would bite." And so that part of the film I really, really enjoyed. It was kind of a very casual, and we went with the whole production crew. So Zach, Nathaniel, and his cousin Matt, who's also on the production crew, all three of them, and then my brother and Matt and myself. So there were
That was
6
fun.
of us, and
That was
man,
a blast.
we had a lot of fun.
A lot of
Um,
laughs.
Fishing. Of course, they were fishing with fly rods.
That's right.
We were fishing with the conventional, and
Well,
I
he
had
had
to
a
make
fly
the
rod.
jet. Oh yeah, you were fishing with.
I
that.
was fly rod.
When I said we, I meant Matt and I and my brother. When and I
I
made
wasn't
the,
even fishing. I was just floating.
I
Yeah.
made,
I just floated.
Matt would be back
It was good.
5 miles. Matt, where's Matt?
Just hung up again. It's okay,
Yeah.
guys. I'm
he's
good.
hung up, and we put him on a lure allowance. So
I am.
The first
not
5
a
minutes we're on the
fisherman.
river.
Oh, the first
You
5
lost.
minutes I was hung up. Yeah. Oh, I lost like 2 hooks.
yeah,
for
you're
sure.
you're already down to your down to your last hook for this
Hey
hour.
guys,
so
I
you
got
better
one
save it.
worm. Yeah. I'm just gonna float the scenic stretch. I'm good. Fish are biting like crazy.
I think, to me, I was reminded whenever we were with the fly fishermen, and then of course us using the other stuff. And I have fly fish, and I really enjoy it. So it's just laughs to me,
Oh, yeah.
just to make fun of you guys for it. But it's like the competitive nature with guys. And it's like, I'm a fly fisherman. Ooh, I have no respect for if you catch a fish. It's like the guys who shoot a deer with a gun. They don't get much respect from the guys with the bow.
Totally.
The guy
No,
that catches a fish
It's
with a
silly.
spinning rod doesn't get much respect from the guy with the fly rod. And I don't understand it. It drives me nuts.
Dude, yeah.
Because if they're the fly fishermen and the conventional fishermen should get together and know that, all right, we're fishermen and we're going to both fight to keep this right to enjoy it. Now, that's not under us attack as much as hunters. So a guy that's hunting with a gun that only hunts on gun season, he comes out at 7:30, he's just as much an important
who
part
cares?
as the guy who's out there every single time he gets off.
Yeah.
And so those guys should all get together. And that's what is bad in this day and age, where there's so much conflict and so much division between everybody. So that was just a light way to poke fun, but know that we're all having a good time on the river.
We all just have fun, but yeah, you couldn't have said that any better.
Yeah.
We all need to become one as outdoors people. Whatever it is that you do out there, man, just enjoy it. And if it's a legal way of doing it, then that's your thing.
That's totally right. Like,
I'm thinking, not to jump in front of you, but continuing that and going and then going back to what I just said. I hated crossbows when they legalized it in Missouri.
Yeah.
But as I start trying to find more people to take, I love the idea that now I can get a crossbow and say, we're going hunting still.
yeah.
And you don't have to be practicing with the bow all summer.
It's got
We're going to shoot the crossbow just a little bit, and I know it's dialed in because I've got it.
And we're not taking the shot over this, and you'll, if you aim and shoot correctly, you'll have a dead deer.
Plus, we're going to bring deer really close. You're going to really get to enjoy it.
And you get to take them during a specific time of year that you wouldn't be able to hunt if you just rifle hunted.
Exactly.
And, you can take them that late October time where you just see a lot of bucks running everywhere looking for the first hot does. So it's a great way to introduce people.
Yep.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say, like, even, like, again, I'm not a fisherman. I don't classify myself as a fisherman, but, like, I'm a guy who I super, super enjoyed just floating and being on the water. Like, back home, there's tons of creeks and rivers in Virginia. We had gorgeous views of Shenandoah Valley, Shenandoah rivers. I loved getting out there on them, and I would just sit there and float and just, like, be a part of it. I would get up super early and just kind of, like, the day would wake up and I was on the water. Like, I just love that. To me, that's relaxing, and that's what that day was for me. Like, I acted like I fished and I got hung up a bunch and I think I caught like 3 fish, but I just loved being out there with friends and just sitting there floating and seeing the Ozarks, the bluffs, the chinkapins growing off the side of these rocks. And like, it was just
the bur oaks.
The bur oaks that we saw. I was like,
as
man,
we debate this all the time of what's our favorite tree, especially
I'm
home.
going bur.
And it's like, how can you not? I love the white oak tree, but they're so abundant, and the bur oak is kind of still unique to us. We don't see a lot of them, but they're so cool. The acorn is so amazing looking.
They're all
tree
spiky,
itself,
right?
It's got the little like hairs all around it. Yeah,
and they're a lot bigger, aren't they?
They're huge.
They're golf ball size, if not bigger.
Yeah, and so it's hard for us to say that bur oak isn't our favorite tree.
And
there was a lot of them on that river.
There's a bunch of them there. Driving home yesterday from out west, we were coming through St. Joe, and we were right along the Missouri River, and the bluffs, like, you're looking up on the bluffs, and it was just bur oaks across the whole top of them, just like these big monster full canopy ones. It's like, oh, I love the look of those from 300 yards away. I was like, oh,
you know it's a bur oak.
I knew it was a bur oak.
They're just so rugged looking.
Gosh, they're gorgeous.
So,
and we were just kind of floating in and around them that whole trip. Like, I was just taking it in.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, you grew up enjoying fishing, Adam. You grew up fishing, and you're getting more into the fly fishing. And I grew up just floating and enjoying that. But, like, that's what the river and the outdoors can do for everyone. Like, no matter how you enjoy it, no matter how you want to enjoy it, it's there for you to do it. Just go out and do it.
Yeah. And I think the big thing was we talked about summer being so hot and still trying to find ways to get outdoors, and you do all the habitat work, but it's important that we don't burn ourselves out, or we don't make it to where it's always a job or it's always hard work. You get out, you find ways to really just enjoy nature. And so that's what the part of, or the importance, and the reason we went on the float was we wanted a day for the production crew and all of us just to get together and have fun,
Yeah.
but still be productive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we floated the river. Is amazing. It was a great reminder of just the natural beauty that we have here. So if you aren't, I mean, it's as simple as going. We actually went and met at a canoe rental place, and to where you could just go and pay to rent their canoe and float the river. You wouldn't have to buy anything other than rent the canoe.
Right.
And you could have had so much fun. So
yeah, the rivers in the Ozarks are just so beautiful. My wife and I were at the Current this weekend. Talk about another beautiful river.
Incredible.
There's springs all up and down that river.
That
and they're
one
just
is
so
incredible.
cool. We went to some national forest called Alley Mills. Have you guys ever been to Alley Mills?
I think so. Yeah.
It's a big red barn.
Yeah. Alley Spring.
And the mill's right there.
Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, it's probably
National Park Service just shared a picture of that on their Instagram.
Yeah.
Actually.
It's huge. I mean, the spring is probably half the size of your house here. It's a giant spring. And it's just beautiful. You know, since it's become a national park, you know, you can't touch the water and stuff like that. So it's really pristine in its natural habitat. But it's really cool.
Yeah.
That's
I think
the thing.
it was.
In every area you go to, the creek system, the water system is so unique. You go to South Carolina, Georgia, and you see that black water and the cypress swamps and knees and at like the Spanish moss hanging over. Like no matter where you go, like the waterways they're so unique to that area.
I know.
Like, go out and enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
How about Jenny Lake, Matt?
Oh gosh, yeah. My wife and I this past week were in Yellowstone and Grand Teton and Idaho, and Jenny Lake is at the base of the Tetons and just absolutely incredible.
Takes your breath away.
That's cool.
Both when you jump in and when you see it.
Well, her and I we did whitewater rafting on the Snake River. And that's incredible, but cold.
Yeah.
Man, we both got in.
You had to wear wetsuits, right?
You didn't have to.
Okay.
But
when we went, we had to.
We did. I was like, I'm getting in, so I'm wearing a wetsuit.
I don't
no
blame
doubt.
you.
They said it was
blame you.
55, which is about the highest that it gets throughout the summer or
Really?
the year. Never freezes because it's flowing so fast. But oh my gosh, it was cold. But no matter where you go, the water systems are unique to those areas. You know, it's awesome.
So, part number 3 was the timbering.
Mm-hmm.
So we showed the progress of timbering. So we did the timber harvest, part of the timber harvest, I should say.
120 to 50 acres.
Yeah, on the Prairie Hollow property, our home base, and we basically returned to see the results of one growing season. Now they cut these trees mainly in July and August and September of last year, and so we've had, of course, we had winter where nothing was really growing, and then in the spring green up, and this summer everything growing. So it's not really even that a year of growing
half
season.
A growing. Well, I'd say 2/3 of a growing season when that was filmed.
And so we returned to see what was once leaf litter and sticks and twigs, like not much benefit to the wildlife.
Zero quality habitat.
To where the only real benefit was when acorns fell during a small portion of the year. The rest of the year is pretty much barren desert. Now we have browse, going back to that. We have tons of browse. We have so much green growth from a lot of the summer annuals and early successional plants growing up to where it's like we have. I just looked at this past weekend. We have spots where we have giant ragweed 8 foot tall.
Oh yeah.
That I'm sure people drive by. I'm sure I may get in trouble saying this, but some of the locals may drive by and look at the leaves and go, "Dang!" I'm like, I gotta give it. We ought to harvest. Oh, never mind. That's just giant ragweed.
I mean, it seriously is 8 foot tall.
That's crazy.
And next to the roads, to where now people can't. What you could drive and see up through the timber, you can't.
No, it looks like a mess in there, but a beautiful mess at
It's
that.
a beautiful mess.
It is.
That's a country song right there.
Is it?
What a beautiful mess.
Oh, that is a song. It's a Diamond Rio song. And so you have tons and tons of forage right now. I mean, it's green. There's tons of common ragweed, giant ragweed growing, all kinds of other plants. I mean, you saw yellow honeysuckle, one of our native honeysuckles.
Out the wazoo.
Yes. And And so not only do we have tons of forage, but as that matures, I mean, you think of that giant ragweed, once it matures, we're still going to have tons of stalk and limbs hanging from it to where you can't, it's still great cover.
Yeah.
And all the seeds are now great seed for the quail that are hopefully going to find that soon. So it was just,
It's not only canopy opening, but like eye opening too, for people who have come and visited, like you, Zach, and the people who were on the tour. That's another part that was their favorite, is the TSI work, and then comparing that to the timber harvest, and then comparing that to follow up the timber harvest with additional cutting TSI in timbered areas. Like the stages, the development, the opening of the canopy, the amount of sunlight that gets to the ground, and what that then, how the forest responds to that sunlight, what comes back. It's as evident as, I don't know, anything. Like, I think you can't deny it.
The one thing we should say and really stress to people is, because a lot of people listen to this podcast or listen to other podcasts because we all have the goal of killing big deer, or killing a target deer, I should say.
Whatever big is to you.
Yeah.
And you don't, for the most part, and I would say 90% of the guys, because 90% of the guys aren't planting a huge amount of crops or food plots for the deer. They're planting a couple food plots or several food plots, but not enough to really change the whole property. You grow big deer in timber country by managing the timber.
Right.
100%.
You don't grow big deer in timber country by planting a few food plots. You grow them by managing the timber. And by managing them, that means getting rid of the weed trees and letting plants grow on the forest floor. So you get into more woodland settings. You get into more savanna settings. You find what's native to that site and you enhance it and you build off of that. You don't try to make it something that it's not. We said this at the workshop, that just if you have a glade, you don't try to make it a food plot, because you're going to fail miserably. You need to enhance that glade to make it as productive as
best glade that you can make it.
Yes.
Most of our glades around here are just rocks anyways.
Yeah.
But the native stuff grows through. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you open up even more, you'll have more natives.
Exactly.
So the other reminder with that timber harvest, everybody saw the green carpet of everything growing. No fertilizer, no lime. All it was sunlight and rainfall. And because of that, you think about that when comparing that, which looked like a food plot grown in the timber, to an actual food plot, the difference in cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can take the timbering and say, this is what I'm going to allow my deer to survive on. This is what is going to provide their food, their cover for the year. And here's the food plot for a hunting strategy that's the ice cream of the farm. This is what they're going to eat, but in case this fails, they can still survive and be as healthy as possible on this native vegetation.
Well, the timber harvest, you're net positive money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Food plot, you're negative money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Gabe Brown calls it signing the back of the check versus signing the front of the
right.
check.
Well,
it's either writing them or cashing them.
Yeah.
No doubt. And you're more prone, I think we talked about this in the food plot section last week or the week prior, you're more prone to failures in your food plotting than you are in the timber.
Oh, yeah.
And Adam, you kind of threw out a phrase that we haven't used that much, but you said weed trees. Like, what's a weed tree and managing weed trees? It's a phrase to describe not necessarily a set species of trees, but more or less a condition of specific individual trees within a timbered area or not timbered area. And it's managing those to terminate them, realize that they're not going to be of any value. It could be, in some instances, it's oaks for us. Sometimes we have too high density of oaks. They're growing. There's way too much competition. They're dying out. So we're just going to expedite that. And that right there is a weed tree, so we're going to kill it. And whatever area or sunlight was blocking now is available to reach the forest floor, and more beneficial vegetation will grow in its place where it was. And basically, long term, or simplified, idea of a weed tree, what's it going to do to improve the habitat? down the road.
And we have to be careful when we say weed because we talk about how much we love weeds in our food plots.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's probably why we don't say it a lot, because we don't want people to misinterpret it. When we say weed, some of the weeds we like in our food plots, it's knowing what weeds, and I say that in air quotes, of common ragweed and giant ragweed, things like that we
Things
like.
with forage value.
But then there's Johnson grass or Isa lespedeza, pigweed, a lot of these other weeds that we don't want, mare's tail, that we don't want in our food plot, that we would call weeds, true weeds, a plant in an unwanted place. Then you look at trees and you say, what trees are in an unwanted place? And we look at it, is it beneficial to wildlife? Is it beneficial to me? Is it native? And a lot of times it's, oh, well, at one point this was an oak hickory forest, and now it's a hickory oak forest. So I need to remove a bunch of hickory trees, and
or the sycamores we
trees.
see on ridgetops. It's like it's not even the right site index, but somehow it is growing. But it's not doing me any good here. It shouldn't be here.
It's never going to make a log.
It's never going to make a log. I'm getting it out. It's gone. But it's being decisive in understanding the value of it, or the lack of the value, and making a decision to keep or leave. And moving on to the next one.
Here is a cluster of 20 elm trees that are just growing in this site that is completely shading out the ground. Now, I don't want to completely annihilate them and remove all of them, because that's not land man. That's just me trying to play God and say what can be here and what can't be here. I'm just trying to enhance the landscape. So native tree, but I don't want it to dominate the landscape. So we removed some of those, let a lot more sunlight come down, and pick the healthier ones. And that's the one thing. Just because you see all green canopy doesn't mean it's a healthy tree.
Not at all.
And a lot of times,
shape, look at the form.
Look at the young limbs coming off the trunk as it goes up. If those limbs are starting to die out, and you're starting to see a lot of those come out, it's probably a stressed tree, and you need to do something to either make it healthier or remove it from the system. And so to me, that whole section, that was kind of the meat and potatoes of habitat management in film number 4, was the timbering of the Prairie Hollow property.
For sure.
And seeing the results, they
spoke for themselves.
That's right.
It.
And so,
and the deer using it. The bucks you guys had in it, yeah.
They're there they've been there all summer. That's where a lot of the deer are living.
Take a walk down one of the skidder trails where obviously they're walking. It's easy walking. It's long benches, and there's browse absolutely everywhere.
So then you go and you look at, we went right out of the timbering to follow up, because we have a lot of cameras in the timbered areas. We're looking for their hitless bucks. And we talked about Big Show, and we're like, I'm waiting for him to show up. And we haven't confirmed this, but we were then talking about Hippie showing up. We thought this buck was Hippie. And so you're going to hear it right here first on this podcast. That wasn't Hippie, we don't believe. Hippie was a real wide 10-pointer that his main beams where they ended were kind of still 14 inches wide. This buck, since the fourth filming, he's grown even more, and his main beams have started wrapping back around like a basketball shape, rounded form.
And
tines just went through the roof. So we have a really, really nice mainframe 8-pointer that's just a stud that I believe is Big Show.
Which we believe is Big Show.
And Big Show last year, we thought he's probably 3, but he could be 3.5, or it could be 2.5. And so this year we're trying to look at all these pictures and go, okay, is Big Show this stud of an 8-pointer? Was that his jump from 2.5 to 3.5, or was it 3.5 to 4.5? Now, if it's 2.5 to 3.5, we're still going to shoot him.
It's impressive, yeah.
But it would be interesting to know how big he got if he did make that jump from 3.5 to 4.5. But I suspect he's 4.5. So, an absolute good Ozark Mountain deer.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that deer, building the hit list. We're using DeerLab.
Well, honestly, now that we figure that it is Big Show, it's kind of even a better situation, because Hippie, if it was him, he had a very distinct pattern last year of what he was doing, where he was at during season, during the rut. It was, okay, well, we can kill him there. But Big Show, he has a different pattern. And right now he's staying a lot of his time on the lease. And last year he spent a lot of time in a very specific portion of the lease, and I'm confident, I guess I would say. With the intel we got from him last year, if we go back and analyze it, now knowing that this is probably him, we're gonna make some good moves, I think. And what we've done, the food plots that are in place now, and the stands that are in place, I think that we will have a good shot at harvesting him if that is him, and he does very similar to what he did last year.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging, but we're sure because he's.
This time of the year is so fun getting all those pictures, and
it's Christmas morning every time you go
the engines are running in the mine trying to figure out how
yeah.
to hunt these deer and what they're gonna do. It's so fun.
That it certainly is.
And the last part of the film was the spring.
Yep.
That was definitely something that was very cool. A good reminder of the natural beauty, once again, that we have here at our fingertips. Now, that one is a good reminder of private land ownership and the responsibility you have in owning that land and conserving that land. And now, we're not complete hippies, I'll say, and say that all land should be left alone. There is within reason.
We brought up the difference between preservation and conservation many times, I think, on the podcast, and it's a conservation mindset here. But it just, if you have a feature, it needs to be respected and taken care of.
Something that unique.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And so that spring is private land, and Nathaniel actually has a book that is that explains, I forget what they called it, Big
Blue Spring, I think.
Big Blue Spring or something like that. Real creative name, but
they looked at it and said, "Huh,
that's
Big Blue Spring.
It's kind of big."
Well, there's only a dozen of them in the Ozarks,
right.
so
Big Blue Spring 1, Big Blue Spring 2.
Well, all these guys started going across the land, and they all like, oh, look at this Big Blue Spring. Oh, I'm going to call it Big Blue Spring. Not knowing that 2 counties away, there was another guy looking at another spring going, I'm going to call this Big Blue Spring. And so that, to me, so that Big Blue Spring, the book, some guys they put on scuba gear. I can't even imagine, because they did it in the 60s, so I imagine it's the guy out of the aquarium, or out of the fish tank that's got the big metal helmet.
Globe over.
That's what he was sitting down. And they went down, and 41 foot to the top entrance of the cavern that goes back into the rock, and it's like a 15-foot opening. You swim through that, and you don't go very far, and it goes into a room that's just tornadoing gravel of gravel and water. So like where the water's coming out, there's gravel just spinning around in it. And so you couldn't go through that. I mean, you get sandblasted with
you'd
the
go
rock.
through, but you're not coming out.
Whoa.
And so it's very unique. And the land ownership from land ownership started, if that even is a thing still, but has been contained and left just the way it is. It starts out as a big blue spring, comes to a big pool, and it dumps out in the Niagara River. And nobody's changed it. Now, I think there's times where people say, well, it's a big spring. I want to build a dam and make a big spring-fed lake. And in this case, if they did that, they would run this natural beauty forever.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a reminder of the importance of letting nature be in most instances, because we're never going to make it better than it was intended to be.
Nope.
So we jumped in. I had a lot of fun jumping in.
We had to test the water.
Had to.
And it was so hot.
It was about like the Snake River.
That's it.
Gosh.
We had to test the water, and it was definitely fun and a good. I just love the natural beauty and the springs. Just
you can't make it up. You can't replicate it.
No.
I can't even get the words to put together how much
Seriously.
fun we had. So
It was a lot of fun. Taking
one
it all
thing
in.
we didn't mention was the glades that we saw floating that river, and how they are being
bluff.
taken over by eastern red cedar. There, you didn't think I was going to get into this podcast, but I did.
I had to do it.
They're the glades that kind of these big, huge, open, dry grasslands that are native to the Ozarks are getting taken over by these eastern red cedars, and it was just a good reminder. We need to burn these things. So and cut the cedars
I
off.
think
Or
we
the
actually-
erosion on the
We actually
on the
made
riverside.
plans to take drip torches on the kayaks next
Yeah.
year and just ride along the bank.
This winter.
You guys are fishing. I'll just hang the drip torch out and
Yeah.
kayak along the bank.
So, yeah, and then of course
That was
the
a joke.
erosion that we actually filmed that didn't make the cut. Maybe we'll break out one of these days of
Oh, the erosion.
The
The
erosion,
erosion.
yeah.
Yep.
good reminder of, when people putting out these pushing out and making these bottom fields, and they're pushing it to where there's one row of trees next to the creek, or sometimes it's just a ditch, and they're
Or
like,
it's
oh,
just
that's good enough.
It's a fence. That's
And
it.
they're like, oh, that's that one row of trees, that'll hold the bank. Well, if those trees give out, then you have a huge disaster in your hand, because you have not only are those trees going to fall in, and all that gravel or silt that's there is going to fill into the river, but then you have the ability for the river to now change, because it's going to hit a bank that's not secure. And so you'll have this erosion. And so we saw that throughout the whole river.
Yeah.
And then you hear this about the rivers used to be a lot deeper, but you look at the amount of gravel that's in the creeks. Huge problem. And so erosion control is a huge thing we need to be focused on.
Honestly, wetland management, riparian management, stream management is huge, and I don't think there's great resources out there to educate landowners on that.
Remember the book that we
resource.
had that my brother gave us?
1978. I think
It's like
maybe.
all these pictures are
Those
pulling out the
diagrams.
case.
Yeah.
The case notes, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, old stuff, but it's a serious thing, because you hear the phrase "everyone lives downstream," but it's incredibly true. But we have to see that as a resource too, and the diversity that happens with these streams and outside of the banks, being wise with those resources of the riparian areas, the wetland areas, understanding what they do.
Yep. So I hope everybody enjoyed film number 4. If you haven't already, please share it on Facebook, Instagram.
Watch it and share it. Yep.
Share it in emails. I don't care. Just share it. That's the biggest way you can help us on these films, to ensure that there's going to be future films, is by sharing it and letting more people know about the Land and Legacy film series. Sharing the podcast. We would much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Would you rather... You got anything in mind? I asked you guys a very random last week. So
I have a silly one.
You brought El Camino into the
El
wheel.
Camino, yeah. That was right.
that's right.
Mine's a silly one.
Go ahead.
Me and my buddies, whenever we were younger and we used to hunt, we would always say this to each other. So if we weren't seeing deer or whatever, we'd be like, okay, if you had the ability to do this, would you rather be able to lift the forest up and all the habitat, like the grasses, like lift it up in the sky, yeah.
What?
And see where everything is, and then put it back down, or freeze time to where you could walk around and see where the deer are?
I was like,
it's a silly one, but
please get somewhere with this, because I am so confused right now.
Yeah.
I got it now. Okay. I'd rather freeze time and walk around.
Okay.
I want to see specifically where they're bedding at.
True.
and what cover they're using. That's just.
Well, you could walk
me.
right over them and not see them if it's really,
They could be hidden against
You said
the
freeze
log.
time.
They could be hidden against the log that we've cut and laid down and raked everything out.
I was like, pick it up. I just want to see them.
No, I want to walk around too.
I want to see. I want to see them in their natural environment, but
There's
frozen
my
in
silly
time.
one. Yeah, there's my silly one for you.
If the day ever comes, I'm definitely going to pick freeze it.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Would you rather? You have a hunt coming up this fall. Would you rather try to take a kayak, anchor up just downstream on a crossing, and shoot a deer crossing a creek out of a kayak while you're sitting in the kayak? Or would you rather go and hunt, do a still hunt through the timber, and you're going from tree to tree and shoot one that way? What would be more fun to you?
I've done the still hunt before, and that's incredibly awesome. That's fun. I like being able to move and get practice the woodsmanship. But the kayak for sure, I'd like to try that. Just find a crossing and just sneak in there, put yourself right up against the bank of root water or something, and
yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
I like the spot and stock. I'd want to do the spot and stock.
I think I'd rather. I love the sound of the spot and stock. Done it, but I think the thing that I love about hunting waterways is you just never know what's going to show up.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Like last year, Matt, when we were in Kansas, it was like, hey, there's a beaver back. No, that's not a beaver. It's
a coon.
It's a raccoon swimming. Like
That's
he was
cool.
just swimming downstream.
Yeah.
We had ducks that buzzed us like in the tree.
Oh, that's
Just
cool. Yeah.
I mean, came banked around.
That
They're wood ducks,
almost shot at a doe.
standing in. Yeah.
In the
standing
creek.
in the creek and on the other side of the creek. So I almost shot her across the Republican River. It was like a 45-yard shot. She was high alert because we did not expect deer to come up the creek channel.
They seriously walk 100 yards down the river, walk through the river,
No
going
kidding.
upstream, find the sandbar, and walk in that sandbar probably their shin level deep, but just
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
3 does just bump all the way up.
So they were like, I smell something. I smell something. And so when
Yeah, that'd be pretty unique, actually.
Yeah. You going to change your answer?
No.
Okay.
There's a guy who's going to lift up. What would you do? How'd you answer? Lift up the habitat or walk in there?
I've never thought about it from the habitat perspective, so I always thought, let's lift it up because you can just see everything.
That's fun.
Let's lift it up or burn it down.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that's 2 of them. Matt, you didn't have one on the last. All right.
I got one. You guys had the resources to buy 100 acres in Michigan or 100 acres in South Carolina to deer hunt on.
Michigan.
Michigan, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I just feel like bigger deer. I don't know if that's right, but
I've
never hunted both
I like
states.
the regulations in Michigan better than South Carolina.
You don't want to rifle hunt in August?
No.
Are you serious?
No, and I don't want. Yeah.
What?
Seriously?
Yeah.
I thought it was Tennessee that was only doing.
No.
No,
South Carolina, you can
in the
gun hunt.
Delta, I think, or in
Yeah,
the
really?
what do they
The
call
low
it?
country.
Yeah, the low country. Yeah.
You can rifle hunt, kill them
Can
September.
you run dogs
August.
in South Carolina?
Oh, that I'm not sure of. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, I would take Michigan just because we saw Michigan this past whenever it was.
It was
May?
in May 19th.
And I thought it was beautiful country, great people.
It was very pretty.
Yeah.
And I saw some things that told me that, you have the ability to do some habitat stuff up here, contrary to popular belief, that you can really
kill
do
the
some
does.
really cool stuff up there.
You really could. Yeah. And
Now,
the area
I'm
that
getting
we
the
were
heck
in,
out come December.
Yeah, that is true. That's going to be brutal. That is very true.
Yeah. And so I would take Michigan. Anyway, hopefully everybody enjoyed this week's podcast. If you haven't already, go check out the film number 4. Hopefully by this time you have, or you have not a clue what we're talking about. But anyway, please share it, leave us a review, and catch us next week. We'll see you.
See ya.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Land and Legacy's Hunting and Habitat Management Podcast. If you like what you hear, check us out at landandlegacy.tv. You can submit a viewer question right there, and we're answering on the podcast, or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Feels pretty good knowing that from the beginning of time, God has called us to be a caretaker, gamekeeper, a manager of the land. So with that being said, don't you think we should do it all for the love of the land and the glory to God?